Okay, so now let's look at experimental probability. And the difference between theoretical and experimental is that theoretical is what we expect to happen. So in the case of throwing a heads or tails on a coin, we would expect both to be equally likely because there's two sides, two possible outcomes, and if the coin is fair or there's nothing wrong with it, each is equally likely. Experimental probability, however, is different in that it's what actually happens. So when we run a test, if we threw the coin 10 times, we might get 3 heads and 7 tails. So that is experimental probability, actually doing the experiment, which is different to what we expect should be happening. So we use a slightly different formula here. Experimental probability of an event based on a particular experiment. And we get this by the number of times the event happened over the total trials in the experiment. That's the total times we run it. Then we've also got this one, expected number of occurrences or expected frequency is what we usually call it, equals the probability of that event happening by the number of future trials. So we can use that probability that we found to work out what we expect to happen in the future. So let's look at an example of those. So that's where it's really useful. So we've got a spinner is spun 50 times and these are the results. Let's answer these questions. So what is the probability of getting a red? So again, write a little formula in the context of the problem we're working with. It only takes a minute and it helps you figure out what to put in. So if we want the number of reds over the total trials. So in this case, 30 reds, 50 trials, 3 out of 5. So there's 4 colours. So maybe you might expect theoretically that there'd be an even split between the 4, but in this case, that's not what happened in the spinner. So what is the experimental probability of blue? Same situation. So number of blues over total trials is 5 blues out of 50, so 1 out of 10. Always simplify down as much as possible. The next one, what is the experimental probability of red or purple? Now that or is really important. That means red would give us an answer that we're looking for, but so would purple. So that actually expands our number of possible outcomes that we're looking for. So we've got the number of red in this case plus the number of purple because either of those would be acceptable, favourable outcomes. So total trials. So there's 30 red, 13 purple, still 50 trials. So that's going to be 43 out of 50. So a good chance of getting one of those. The last one, if the spinner was spun 1,000 times, what is the expected number of times that would be spun? So this one is talking about that last formula, expected frequency. So in this case, we've got the probability of white. So it's the probability of the event happening times the number of future trials. So in this case, it's the probability of getting a white times the number of future trials. And what we're talking about here for future trials is that 1,000. So 2 out of 50 is what's happened for the white so far. Out of the next 1,000 future trials, we expect 2 out of 50 of those to be white. So when we multiply that out, that means we expect 40 out of the next 1,000 trials to give us an outcome of white. Okay, there you go. Thank you.